Hi, it's Fraser Malcolm for Golf FM, head professional at North Berwick East Links Glen Golf Club. Here to do a little review and say what I think of the new Taylormade iron range. P790 is included because it was revised earlier in the year, and P770 is a new one, and P7MC is a new one as well. There's a blade as well, but I'm not going to bother with that at the moment because I just think that's slightly too hard to hit for most people. So we'll concentrate on the ones I know. Who are they for? Well, first of all, the P790 is, I would say, I mean, all of these clubs I could use, and I'm a club pro. I think most people up to about mid-teens could use P790, with one proviso that maybe your miss is left. I wouldn't advise this P790 if your habitual miss is to the right. The reason being there's not a lot of offset on this, and so it's not trying to help you with shots that you might lose to the right. But if you are somebody that maybe hooks a ball or pulls it a little bit, then it wouldn't be a bad idea to have one of these, and even if you are sort of higher up in the teens. It's extremely powerful. It looks really good. It looks almost like a blade. When I'm fitting this for people, they sort of look at me twice and say, "Oh, you sure should be hitting something like that?" And it really has all the characteristics of a game improvement iron packaged up in this really nice bladey look. The top line is, say, a little bit thicker than maybe a out-and-out blade, but it's perfectly adequate. I don't like a thick top line. I could quite easily use these. The technology, I mean, if you're looking at buying these, you're either one of these people that loves all the technology, or you just hit it and want to see what it does. But it involves that this has got speed foam, it's got the through slot speed pocket, that's a little gap here, and then it's filled with foam on the inside. Progressive inverted cone technology on the face, which is supposed to just improve accuracy on off-center hits all the time. So it's got all the technology really that Taylormade can throw at it. In terms of the lofts of these things, you'll often hear people tell you that, well, the lofts are really strong, so obviously they're going to go a long way. And that is true. The P790 has a loft of 30.5. The P770 is 33 degrees loft, and the MC, which I'll show you in a minute, 34 degrees loft. So there is a bit of a difference. The offset on each club, that is how far back the face is set from the shaft, is only 2 millimeters, and a variance of 0.7, 0.4 and 0.1 up to the MC. So it's 2 millimeters basically of offset, and there's very, very tiny differences between the amount of offset on them. The offset's important because better players, people who miss left, don't want offset on it. So they want it just the shaft and the bottom line to come out straight, and they don't want it set back. It just makes them think they're going to hook it even more. So these have all got minimal offset. P770 is just like a slimmed down version of P790. It's got all the same technology. The lofts obviously were weaker, so it's not going to go quite as far like for like. And the MC is even weaker again, and doesn't even have all the help. Doesn't have the speed foam, just has a minimal cavity on it. If you don't mind the look of the P790, then I would say that this test is over now, because the P790 for me is the best of the bunch when it comes to it. It just goes miles. It goes absolutely miles, and it's very forgiving. And as I say, I think it looks good. The P770 does the same, but just not quite as forgiving and doesn't go as far. And then the MC is more traditional in terms of the makeup of it and the loft. And the only reason that you might maybe consider MC over the other two is if you're quite a hard hitter of the ball, it's going to have slightly lower spin, club for club, or loft for loft, I should say. And you don't get, which doesn't happen very often, but you don't get a really massive one with one of these every now and again. There is a school of thought that sometimes the P790 or the P770 might do it as well, can have a real flyer where it just, everything comes together and it just goes off like a rocket and goes a bit further than you're used to. Having played with clubs like this over the last couple of years, I can think of one shot maybe where I've hit and I've thought, why did that go so far? Out of all the shots I've hit, I mean, one, I can handle that. Maybe if you're playing golf for a living and you're, I mean, I teach for a living, play tournaments for a living. And if you're playing for a living, then maybe you never ever want to feel that that'll ever happen. But to be honest, in day-to-day life, that is not something which is going to be a problem at all. I can tell you from experience. So we've been through who they're for, what they do roughly. I'll just try and hit a few. I've done some stats already on this, and I did 5 shots each, where the P790, P770, and P7MC, and I only did. You say, why did you only do 5? Well, I did 5 good ones. I thought, well, I'll test it on when I hit it good. What does it do? And P790 went an average of 182. P770 went an average of 173, and P7MC went 165. So there was an 11-yard gap between 790 and 770, and an 8-yard gap between 770 and MC, and a massive gap between P790 and MC. But I don't think you'd really be getting one or the other. I mean, this test really is more about, should I get P790, should I get P770? So I'll hit a few and just see if that rings true. The spin rates and everything were, you know, they're lower than you might think for a 7-iron. I was only getting 4.950 on my P790 spin, backspin, and 4.836 weirdly on the P770 lower. So that could have been just how I hit them, but you know, you could say, well, that's low, you know, for a 7-iron. But the fact of the matter is, a normal 7-iron, like the MC, you're going to be hitting an 8-iron in P790 or P770 against a 7-iron in the MC. So that suddenly the spin rate's going to go up when you hit a P790 8-iron, as opposed to an MC. It's going to get very similar to it. So I often hear this as well about these sort of clubs, that the spin rates are low and that they won't stop. And as I said in a previous test about the Wilsons and the Peng i500 and stuff like that, they do stop. They stop adequately enough. I mean, I play on a course which is pretty dry, it's pretty linksy, it's by the sea, and I do not have a problem with the ball stopping. And I'm not, I don't create a huge amount of spin. You know, I'm a reasonably shallow impact on the ball. I don't hit a lot of spin. So if anything, I would notice that it wasn't stopping, but I don't. I still feel I've got the control. So I've told you my distances anyway, so it doesn't really matter what I do with this, but I'm going to try and hit some anyway and see what happens. So this is P790. That felt good. Yeah. I'll get out of the way of the machine. So this is 191 straight off the bat with a 7-iron, the P790. I mean, it's just unbelievable how far it goes. I'm so impressed with this club. When I, you know, and it's such a sort of easy sell as well when you're fitting. It's like it goes miles and it looks brilliant. And then they brought out P770 because some people maybe complained that, well, P790 is still a bit chunky and I want something a little bit neater. And it is fractionally neater. I don't know if it's any better looking. It's debatable. I mean, all of these things with golf clubs are debatable. It's got a fractionally thinner top line. It just, when you put it down, it just doesn't look as though it's helping you as much. But some people like a really thin thin blade. So let's have a shot with this. Getting struck it well. A little bit left. So that actually might go quite far because it went left. Because when you go left, you de-loft the club slightly and it goes a long way. So it's 185. So bear in mind that went left. So it's maybe not as good a indicator of how far it's going to go. It still didn't catch up with P790. But if you remember my previous 5-shot, it was 173 was roughly what I was getting out of this 7-iron P770, and I was getting 182 out of the P790. I felt like I hit that right because I didn't want to go left again. Which obviously it's the opposite. It's true when you hit a ball right, you have more of an open club face usually, and then therefore there's more loft on it and it doesn't go as far. So we'll try another one. Probably left again. Yeah. And well hit, so it should probably go absolutely miles that. No, 183. Well, you can see there it's still not quite catching up with the P790. There's one more. That was thin. But, you know, I sometimes wonder when I do this whether actually part of the reason I'm not hitting it well is because the club's not quite as easy to hit as the other one. You know, and another thing, and I'll come on to it at the MC, is you quite often hear people say about blades, oh, the feel of blades, unbelievable, so nice, so nice. What they never ever say really is how bad a blade feels when you don't hit it. So when you don't strike it that well, not only does it go nowhere, it feels horrible. And people say, oh, well, that's because, you know, you've got to know if you've hit it properly or not, because you need to go and practice on stuff if you haven't. Well, in the real world, most people aren't robots. Most people don't have such repetitive swings that they do hit the ball exactly in the same spot every time. If you're lucky enough to be one of those players, brilliant, go and get yourself a set of blades or MCs. But if you're like everybody else that hits quite a lot of good shots, but quite often will not strike the ball, we get it thin, heavy, whatever, that's when you don't want the blades, because not only do they not do anything for you, they feel horrible as well. Like when you don't hit the P790, it doesn't feel that bad, and it still tries to help you. This P770, when you don't hit it, you kind of feel it. I can't hit it. Let's try another one. That felt a bit better. In terms of the height that the clubs went, so there's 7 irons against each other, and did it previously. Height 27 and height 26. So 27, P790 went higher for me than the P770. Again, this could just be how you've struck it on the day. This is where you've got to be careful with tiny little differences with computer information, because it can be a lot. You aren't a robot at the end of the day, and if you swing slightly differently and your impact position slightly different, then you're going to get a different result. What the glaring obvious thing for me between P790 and P770 is it doesn't go as far, the P770. And yes, that's to do with loft and the fact that there isn't as much mass. I mean, remember that the loft on the P770 was 33 and the P790 is 30.5. So there is a difference. But as I've said before, when you are standing on the tee and you've got 185 yards, or I have 185, 190 yards even to the flag, sometimes, depending on the wind, I'm going to be able to think, oh, that's a 7 iron with this. And if I was using the MC for instance, that would be 2 clubs different. I'd have to hit a 5-iron. And I don't know about you, but that for me is much more confidence inspiring to go into the bag and take a 7-iron out, be able to hit that, say you're under pressure, or a 5-iron. What do you want? Well, I would take 7-iron every day. And it's kind of the same with the P770. You are going to have to hit a little bit more club if you go for P770 than you would if you can stomach the look of the P790. Right, so I have a few shots with the P7MC, the bladey one. Don't think I hit that very well. So remember, my previous record on this was 165 was my average, so that's not far off. As opposed to, so 165 as opposed to 182 in the P790 and 173 in the P770. It looks thinner. You know, the difference between that, the P7MC and the P770 is minimal. When you put them together you can kind of see it, but from memory, somebody mixed them up and said, tell me which one that is. I could potentially get that wrong, P7MC and P770. So I suppose you've got to say that's impressive for the P770 to look a little bit like the P7MC. You'd tell the P790 because it's just a tiny bit thicker on the top line. Let's have another shot of the P7MC. That was good. Not sure I can hit it any better than that actually. So I'm interested to see how far that goes. See, that did really well, but that was absolutely nailed. 176. My average, as I say, was 165. That's out of the ordinary. So that is about it. I don't really want to go on and on about this because there's only so much I can say about golf clubs. And I don't want to bore you, so I probably bored you already. This P7MC, again, you've got a thinner sole, I should say, on that, which is a consideration as well. The thinner the sole you go, the more chance you have of getting it a little bit fat. It doesn't want to fight the turf, it wants to dig in. It doesn't want to come out and bounce out of the turf. So again, especially on like long irons, you catch a really thin sole on that. You catch it a little bit heavy, it's just going to go nowhere. So really the P7MC, I would say, is a very good player's club. I mean, if I was to use that, it would just annoy me because I would think, well, in theory I can hit this all right, but I'm having to use at least a club, if not 2 clubs more every time than I would have if I used P790, which I really don't mind the look of. I think it's a nice looking club. Some people might find it a bit too chunky, I don't. But for me, the winner of the test is still the P790. P770, yeah, it looks nice. But all it is just a sort of detuned version of the P790. Slightly thinner top line, but cost so minimal, and then smaller head, and just doesn't go as far. So you could try, you know, there's lots of combo sets with this as well. And to be honest, I don't quite get it because you have to basically weaken the P790 to fit in with the P770s, and you're just taking away the benefit of what this does. The benefit of this is you can pull out less club on the tee than you're used to doing. And that's a nice feeling for anybody. I had, out of interest, I had the Dynamic Gold S300 in the P770. Well, I had the 105 Dynamic Gold in one of them. Yeah, the 105 in both of those, P770, P790. And then it was KBS in the MC2 or 120. That's I usually use Dynamic Golds, so I'm used to those. But yeah, as I say, P790 all day long for me. they're good. They're all good. They all feel nice. They all feel soft. There's not a lot of difference in the actual feel of them. They all feel, as I say, soft. But what you do notice on P770 and especially MC is that if you don't hit it, it feels horrendous. Whereas P790, if you don't quite hit it, it still doesn't feel that bad. And that's it really. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Thanks to everyone that subscribed recently. If you haven't subscribed and you fancy listening to me again talking about clubs, well then feel free, there's a button at the side. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks very much.